So that's Eyam boundary stone. And you might be thinking, why would I be starting the Halloween trail of 2021 here in the beautiful Peak District? But the Peak District has been somewhat my escape for the last year. After the lockdowns, so not feeling overly safe to do anything, I would take comfort in the Peak District, the big open doors, and no one really about. But through going to the Peak District and doing research, it is one of the most haunted, terrifying, horrific places throughout history. We are at Eyam. That was the boundary marker for the plagued village. Now, 200 yards that way is Lover's Leap, another gruesome tale. There's a murder stone less than a mile that way of another grim tale. The Gibbet Rock, which is the next video, is just over there. But I thought I would start with something that's not as much a ghost story or hauntings, is more a real life event, and let's be honest, they're often a lot more terrifying. Now, if you don't know, Eyam, the plagued village, is a tiny village in the Peak District in Derbyshire. And in September 1665, a tailor of this village ordered some cloth from London. Now, his assistant, noticing that the cloth was damp, he opened it and he placed it by the fire. And unfortunately, this cloth had fleas on it. Fleas that had come from rats. Fleas that had come from rats from London, which were infected with the Black Death. And it spread across Eyam and brutalised this tiny village. It's estimated 1/3 of the village died in about an 18-month spell. But throughout it all, they didn't waver in their joint agreement to lock up, to quarantine, which we can all better relate to now. But their version of quarantine was a lot different. The boundary marker was a spot where nobody was allowed past, to escape or to come in. The holes in the rock were used for the villagers to put coins in. The holes would have been full of vinegar to disinfect the coins, which they believed would work. And their goods, their food, and the stuff they needed would be waiting there for the people of Eyam. Now, I'm going to walk into the town and show you around and show you some of the sights and some of the tales that come from the plagued village, and they're more scary than a ghost story. Unfortunately, William and Boston's wife didn't survive the plague. August the 25th, 1666. So she nearly made it to the end, but she didn't. And you will notice the O, where is it, is misspelt. They had to redo it because they misspelled the name. I'm sure in the middle of a plague, spelling was the last thing on their mind. But William and Boston carried on, and I believe if you do a cricketer's grave, I believe if you do a left and head down that way, and Boston's well, which I will go down to, is down here. I thought I'd take a walk down here, quite a secluded bit. I've not seen anybody, I've been around here for about 5 minutes. William and Boston, the vicar, obviously he wouldn't conduct the services in the church, so he needed an outdoor space. Oh, can you see the chicken coop? So yeah, it said down here through this little weird bit, technical, is where you'll see a lot of the, you'll hear a lot of the ghosts and the noises of Eyam's past. But let's go a bit further in. So yeah, Eyam is plague village, so it doesn't really matter if you had ancestors that lived through it or not. It's what this village is known as. And every plague Sunday, the village as a whole will march through the caves and come back to where William and Boston did his sermons and his services. Family had their farm roughly where the buildings are today, and the Hancock's family's farm home was over there, and here is the Hancock family graves. So we finally come to Eyam's most infamous story, and probably its most harrowing. Behind me is the Riley family graves. Now, they thought they had survived the plague. They were secluded out of the way. We were about a mile from Eyam. We're on the boundary. But the Talbot family got sick, and slowly all the family members started to die, leaving old Bridget Talbot and 3-month-old baby Catherine alone in the home. And then sure enough, the Hancock family, whose are the graves you can see, they got sick, and within the space of 8 days, Elizabeth Talbot buried 6 of her 7 children and her husband here. Now, Bridget Talbot would die on the 15th of August after all the Hancocks had died. Elizabeth Talbot had taken to looking after Catherine, the 3-month-old baby, who would also die. Now, burying 6 of your 7 children is harrowing enough, but if we look down there, that is Eyam, and it's said that Elizabeth Hancock daren't touch the bodies. Her dying children and husband daren't touch the bodies, and she would tie cloth to their ankles and drag them down from the farm along this land to the graves that you can see. And it's said that the village of Eyam, that sits just down there, would come out and watch as every day she dragged another of her family member to her grave. They daren't help because they were infected, and they daren't risk being infected. This plot of land that looks so innocent, such a gruesome tale happened. Real life. So here we are, William and Bosson's Well. Now, I've touched on him already. He was the vicar, and it was him and his speeches of Jesus made a sacrifice, we must make a sacrifice to save everyone. And I mean, who's to say that if they didn't make the sacrifices that they made, that I wouldn't be talking to you and you wouldn't be watching this? We just don't know. This well was like the boundary stone at the start. It was another boundary stone. The well would have been soaked in vinegar for the coins, and the food and the supplies would have been left here. So I'll do my goodbye at the well in Bosson's Well, there it is. I really hope you've enjoyed. There's lots of ghost stories and hauntings from such a creepy and tragic place, of course, but I wanted to focus on the real life because we've all been through our own horrors the last couple of years, I guess. Doesn't comprehend to this, and real life horror is often more scary than a ghost story. I will get to ghost stories soon. One last little bit. Maurice Howe was the gravedigger here in Eyam. An unenviable job, I guess. But he couldn't get infected, hence he was the gravedigger. The people of Eyam were asked to bury their own near where they lived, but if they all died, it was Maurice Howe that would bury them. A horrible job. He would charge quite a bit for this, which is fair enough. I mean, not a problem. But he started to steal from the dead. He stole the money and he stole their possessions. And it said because of this, and in bringing these possessions into his home, his wife and his child got the plague, and he had to bury, the gravedigger had to bury his own family within 3 days. And that's the price of greed.